A special thank you to the FDR Presidential Library and Museum for so generously hosting us today. To officially welcome us, I'd like to introduce Bill Harris, Director of the FDR Presidential Library. Please join me in thanking Bill.
Thank you. And there's no reason to thank me. This institution and this facility and this place, it belongs to all of you. It belongs to all of us. So President Roosevelt, I know, and this is a favorite part of my job, well, one of the 100 favorite parts of my job when I get to speak on behalf of President Roosevelt, would have been thrilled to see you all here today. I'm going to take care of a few business points before I give just a few remarks. First of all, I want to mention our Signature Moments exhibit, which opens in 4 weeks. I sure wish it was open so you could see it today. It's a lot of fun, and as I say to everyone, what it does is it captures the over 100 people, notable, infamous, famous, that the President and Mrs. Roosevelt engaged with on some level in the 65 years of their public life. So everything from a giant letter from an 8-year-old Dalai Lama to Robert Oppenheimer and UFOs and Eleanor Roosevelt. That's right. So that alone is worthwhile. And it'll be open for about a year. And also, I want to note that the museum, the stone building there, if you haven't been, is open to all of you today to tour for free. And upstairs in the research room as well, we have one of the items that'll be on exhibit from Albert Einstein, and it's not the book people have heard of. I'm sorry, it's better. So it's better in a fun way that shows the relationship that the Roosevelts had with a noted scientist who they hosted overnight at the White House 5 years before that letter was written. And I mean, the 5 years, yes, before the letter was written. So it's fun. It's an insight. It shows a comfort level of engaging with people on an intellectual and entertaining level across multiple fields. And that, I think, is why we have this library as well. Let's see. Am I missing anything, Kirsten? Oh, yes. And in relation to that, in the lobby, go have your picture taken with Albert Einstein. I think it's essential. That's the most important thing I had to say, so apologies. Please come back. You're always welcome. Absolutely. So quickly, because I know you have a full meeting today, what I wanted to do in welcoming you here today, because I've done it with for myself and with my staff, with my colleagues, over the last several months, where we face challenges unlike any that we have before. And I think that's a fair comment. That's not at all political. We always have had in these organizations, libraries, museums, and I want to expand that to any cultural institution, and I consider all of us, for all of our practical service that we provide, to be stewards of cultural institutions. And I think, and this is a business meeting, as Kirsten reminded me, it's important for us all to remember that though we balance our budgets and though we have to think about the services we provide, of course, because we want those to be effective and we want to be contributing to the world around us and a part of that and not up above it and beyond it. But I feel, and I have grown to feel more and more, how agitated I've become with the notions of crafting our programs into a business model, into a model that's driven by notions of profit that are measured by dividends or financial outcomes, and less about those of ideas and about possibilities and potential and ideals, words grand that we don't think about as much today and that we even feel vaguely uncomfortable in talking about. But an institution like this, and FDR was very clear when he dedicated, like an art museum, like a library, for all their practical purpose, for all the benefit they add, there is something beyond that. There is something uplifting about it. There is something that one can feel pride about. And there is something we need not be ashamed to discuss. And if we don't reclaim that discussion and insert it into the conversations, then we are just another business. Then we are just another transactional organization that can rise and sink based on whatever the strictures of the day are, or the mission or vision. And we've all been part of those conversations, which are often set aside in terms of sound management and meeting our metrics. So a metric should also be something that's long-term. It's not measurable, really. It's something that fills our spirit. It's something that makes us human. And I think we all have that within our organizations, and we have that within our communities. Think about that. We get to do that every single day. And that's what I tell folks here. It's not a political comment in the least. It's a comment and it's a belief deep within myself, which is why I'm in this profession and I'm an archivist. It's why we do our work to make a difference, but also because it has an inherent value, and we don't talk about those nearly enough either. So what I want to say, in welcoming you all here today, is thank you, because you're out in the community in a very different way than we are. We see many thousands of people here. You're out there doing that practical business of serving, but I think you're doing so much more than that. It's not to underestimate the hard work that you do and the challenging work you do and the work that's often much unappreciated. But it is just to say, as a colleague who are in all of this together, that take a few moments to feel pride in that work and in its value so much higher than what is today, because we are just stewards, aren't we? And we want to leave it better. At least we want to leave it here when it's our time to move along. So thank you. Thank you from here, from this institution, and on behalf of the President and Mrs. Roosevelt. And welcome here today. And I hope you have a good time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's wonderful. As you can see from today's agenda, we have two parts to our morning. The first is our business meeting, and then we have our keynote speaker, Rebekkah Smith-Aldrich. During the first half, we'll take care of several items, including the approval of the minutes from last year's annual meeting and the presentation of new trustees and officers. Then the executive director, Tessa Killian, will provide her annual report. On your table and on the screen is today's agenda. The agenda has a QR code that directs you to a webpage with documents and information about today's meeting. Please take a moment to navigate to that webpage, if you would. On that webpage are the minutes from last year's June 7th, 2024 annual meeting, which was held at Mount St. Mary College. Thank you, Gina. Please review those minutes. Are there any comments or revisions to those minutes? And I'll give you a minute to look at the minutes. Changes? The minutes are approved. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of Southeastern, Tessa Killian.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here today, and I hope you enjoyed your breakfast. We have a really lovely morning planned, and we have people on the live stream. Just so you know, we're live streaming. So I want to thank everyone in the room for being here, and I want to thank everyone online. We have about 70 people in attendance today. So what I'm going to do is provide some updates and talk for a few minutes about some of our newer services. So before I get started, I want to talk about the lions you see up on the screen. So something I saw recently in the news or some library-related social media, I can't remember exactly where, but it reminded me about these library lions. These are the statues outside the New York Public Library. So these sculptures have flanked the library since 1911, when they were unveiled. Fun fact from the New York Public Library website, Teddy Roosevelt wanted them to be a representative of America's strongest animal, the bison, or bison. I'm from Buffalo, so I say bison, but it's bison. People at the time also thought they should be beavers, since the beaver pelts helped the Astors amass their wealth. So they got rich on beaver pelts. And so I'm a cat lover, and I am certainly glad that these are big cats and not bison or beavers. Anyway, So the cats are the library workers' favorite animal, right? Most of us are cat lovers, I would imagine. And I'm not sure if it's because of these big cats or just because cats and librarians go together. I'm not really sure why. But and these guys have had many names and they're both male. So these guys have had many names during their first few years. And in the 1930s, they were named Patience and Fortitude by then Mayor LaGuardia. So Patience is on the left and Fortitude is on the right. And maybe this is why people love them so much. I'm not sure, but they're beloved. Anyway, they're the official trademark mascot of the New York Public Library. But in honor of today's presentation by Rebekkah, which you'll hear later this morning, I am giving them the temporary names Sustainability and Resilience. So they represent two additional qualities of libraries. So as we talked this morning, and Bill already did a great introduction, we need to remember patience, fortitude, sustainability, and resilience. All right, so moving along, I'd like to acknowledge all the many people who support this organization. Southeastern's current membership stands at 108. We represent a diverse range of libraries and organizations, and this donut chart shows the breakdown of members by type. So one of the things I continue to appreciate and value about our multi-type library system is seeing how many library types and organizations collaborate, how we all work together. You represent many sectors, but what you have in common is serving your community's information needs. I hear this from the trustees. I hear it from members. We heard it from Bill this morning. We understand that you value being in the company of people from diverse yet mission-driven organizations. It's challenging to quantify this connectedness. I think he gave us the feeling for it this morning, but how do you put that into numbers? And I hear it from you that you recognize benefiting from the opportunities to collaborate across types. This quote says it best. I found the exposure to other types of libraries to be one of the most rewarding and beneficial aspects of being involved with Southeastern. So we closed our strategic planning survey last Friday. The data still needs to be analyzed and interpreted, and what we've learned will help shape our next 5-year plan of service. The survey had many questions on it, and we appreciate the feedback that you provided. One of the questions attempts to get to know our community and understand the demographics of our regional workforce by asking how long you've worked in libraries or cultural heritage organizations. We see here that a shift is taking place in our workplace demographic. At least among those who completed the survey, we learned that 30% have worked in libraries for 1 to 10 years, which is the largest growth area since the last time we got this data. And the 30+ category is smaller than in previous years. So you can just see the shift on the screen. We had 177 people answer this, and the workforce is getting younger, and those of us who've worked in libraries for more than 30 years are starting to retire. So there's a shift. And knowing this helps us plan professional development. Additionally, it helps us prepare for the future and stay informed about the change in the library workforce. Back to my lions. So navigating our challenges. In the planning survey, we asked members to identify from a list of options the challenges they faced. The list included budget constraints, staffing, facilities, technology, and so on. So I want to share some of what people told us. So I have a little list here. I could have checked all the challenges. No surprise, I'm very concerned about the future of the budget. AI use in libraries will become more complex. We are considered relevant, but we need to work continuously on visibility. It can be a challenge to maintain stamina at times. Concerned about the federal government budget cuts and how they will affect funding for public libraries and education. These are very fearful times in terms of the future of museums and libraries. It's taking a toll on us. I'm concerned about how the U.S. government economic plan will adversely affect our tax base, so we're trying to budget conservatively. And there were many more comments like this. This is just a representative list. So Southeastern as an organization faces similar challenges, and we are concerned about the future of libraries as well. But I wanted to let you know that we'll be making some changes to our dues and fees in the next year that will be effective July 2026, because the funds we receive from the New York State Library just don't keep pace with our costs. We're being thoughtful about these changes. We are working with planning consultants and the planning committee of the board to conduct future outreach and engagement with members this summer. So when I make these recommendations to the board and we ultimately make these decisions, we will allow sufficient time to prepare before any changes take effect. This is where we need to draw on our patience, fortitude, and our resilience. And I've told the staff, and Bill said it, his conversation with the staff sounded so brilliant, but I've told the staff many times in the last few months to keep doing the good work that you're doing and that our members recognize and value. That's our focus right now. So we all have similar challenges, and let's just remember to utilize the tools we have to address them in a manner that aligns with our mission and our principles. Again, we're stronger together as mission-driven organizations when we collaborate. So now I want to tell you a little story about this graph and how we met some of the challenges that we're facing related to technology. Starting in 2023, Zach noticed an increase in traffic on some of our websites, on our 3 self-hosted servers. This is why. The companies that run AI send computer bots to collect data, to index it, and then kind of to teach the AI. So any open site, like the 3 shown here, are targets for these bots. And they increase the traffic on the sites exponentially, slowing down the site and then incurring additional costs for us. So we pay for the outgoing traffic. So when Zach began seeing the increased traffic on our sites, he knew that we needed to act immediately to decrease it. He put in place several tools, including Amazon CloudFront, to stop the bots and monitor the usage. So the new tools include, probably you've seen some of these challenge tests on websites. I saw one when I got the picture of the lions from the Library of Congress. I had to do a challenge test to show that I'm a human going in to use that site. So any organization running a repository or online collection is dealing with these issues. So what you see on the slide is a 1-week snapshot of our traffic. It was just last week on the HRVH historic newspaper site. So the purple line shows the challenge. And once the challenge test is done, they were either allowed in, like I was, to the Library of Congress site, or they were blocked from entering the site. So this will decrease the traffic. So it's really kind of a story. It's still in progress, but I just wanted to show you some of the things that AI is causing organizations who run servers. So we're pleased that the impact on our sites has been minimal. We did not have to take the sites down because that was an option. And we still have access to them. And Zach also really kept a lid on the cost of internet traffic for Southeastern. So our mission is to make these digital objects and resources open and accessible for our community and the people to use. And they still are, thanks to Zach's hard work. So if you want to give a shout out to Zach or talk to him about it, he's sitting right there. So now I'd like to focus for a few minutes on the collaborative work we do to connect the regional libraries. Your feedback and the future trends like AI help shape our professional development and special interest groups. So based on your feedback, we continue to offer hybrid approach to professional development, featuring both online and in-person events and hosting the content in a way that best suits your needs. We collaborate within the region and across councils with ESLN to bring you relevant and accessible programming at no or little cost to you. Last April, we hosted the 10th annual CineCon, which was a hybrid event. We had a room full of attendees and we had the poster sessions, which is this picture of the posters. So all the sessions were from regional libraries, which is what the conference is all about, including Bard, RCLS, Mid-Hudson, New City, Finkelstein, Newburgh, and many, many more. The CE committee did a great job organizing this event. And in honor of the 10th anniversary of the conference, we had people come back and talk about programs that they did in previous years, which is really exciting. So we heard from the Sustainable Libraries Initiative, we heard from RCLS, we heard from Mid-Hudson and came back and gave us updates. So these are all online. Carolyn does an excellent job hosting the conference materials on a LibGuide. So there's 10 years worth of content up there, including this last year, if you want to take a look back at what we talked about in April. Upcoming events include Pillars, is AI on the Test, a symposium for educators who weren't ready for robots, which will be online in July. Can't wait for that. It's going to be a full day event. So we also have several special interest groups coming up this summer, a lot of them that will be in person. This is some people's favorite topic, which is resource sharing. This is something that Southeastern has been doing for 58 years. It's part of our original plans that Southeastern, one of our R's is resource sharing. This is one of the 58 years helping patrons connect resources from other libraries and library systems. But this year was extra special. We demonstrated this commitment to resource sharing by reaffirming and updating the regional interlibrary loan code. This code represents a fundamental core value of libraries, the sharing of materials. A key aspect of our regional code, going back 58 years, is that we don't charge for regional interlibrary loan. This is part of our culture and our code, which we codify, but it's part of the culture. We just don't charge in region for sharing materials. While libraries are under attack and facing challenges, making additional resources available to your communities is core. Kelsey led the effort to get every library system in the region, that's 5 BOCES school library systems, 2 public library systems, and Southeastern. And Southeastern, our board, represented the special libraries and the academic libraries. So it was every library agreed to this code. So the updated code incorporates ILL workflows based on best practices according to the ALA, providing materials and this is the new part, providing materials in accessible formats whenever possible, including the right to modify articles to make them accessible. And Kelsey's going to be doing some training around that in the future. And no tape on other libraries' books. So don't put tape on Vassar's books, please. So we continue our commitment to help you maintain open and secure digital resources. A significant part of our work involves providing digitization services under the HRVH umbrella. 79 members use at least one of these platforms, and our expert staff, Jen, Zach, and Kelsey, manage all of them. Their public usage is excellent. We proudly report that New York Heritage has had over 1.6 million views in 1 year. And I'm pretty sure that Jen and Zach did a good job in reporting that number that doesn't include AI bots. That's people. And there have been many new collections added this past year. A few notable ones are, this is a new collection from the Ulster County Archive, the Kingston Daily Freeman photo collection. In 6 months, Jen, they've updated like 10,000? 10,000 images from the Daily Freeman are up online for public viewing. The Woodstock Public Library added the Woodstock Community Films, which are really cool videos from the 70s. And if you start looking at them, just give up your whole evening because they are really fun to look at and watch. From Moffett Library, we have a new newspaper, the Orange County Post, helping to grow our newspaper site. And one that we're really excited about too is Experiencing the Neutral Ground. These are transcripts of early interviews. I kept saying oral histories and Jen kept correcting me. They didn't have oral histories in the Revolutionary War time period. But these are early transcripts of interviews of people who lived during the American Revolution. This is really exciting content up there. Okay, so with Jen's leadership and Zach's skills, we've developed a digital art dark archive, an online digital preservation system currently used by 12 members. It took years of development to create this robust system, which utilizes national standards to achieve the same results for a fraction of the cost developed by larger consortia. We're really proud that we can do this. Preserving the files you create is a crucial part of the digitization workflow, and we support your efforts in this regard. So pictured here is Palash Bosgang from Bard College. She was at CennyCon presenting her poster and described how she integrated digital preservation and the DDA into her workflows. Palash is also a reminder that the work of digital preservation is as much about the people as it is about the technology and all the planning and patience involved in this work. You can see how proud she is of her poster. And as a forum to discuss these workflows, we've established a digital preservation SIG, which has met 6 times in this past year, which is quite a lot. So we're really proud of Palash and all the work that the libraries are doing with digital preservation. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about digital navigators. So since 2022, our navigator service has supported digital inclusion work in over 70 libraries and nonprofit organizations. We received a grant from the New York State Connect All office to hire digital equity consultants at the Metro Library Council to conduct this work on our behalf. So the preliminary report we received indicate that most clients who use the service are English speaking. The primary reason for their visit was related to digital skills. And additionally, we learned that a good percentage of the clients, like a good percentage, are over 50. The data you see on the screen is from a report that analyzed these client interactions. There's a lot more to go through, but I wanted to show this today and talk about it a little bit, mostly so you could see this map also. So the green on the map shows the locations of the library and nonprofit partners with digital navigators. I think this helps demonstrate where people and community members have access to this service. So currently we have 82 people on the list on our website who are active digital navigators in 54 libraries. We've learned that the digital navigator engagement is very strong, with 90% of the people planning to continue and over 90% who's told us that they gained confidence and practical skills through the training that they received. The individuals who do this work have formed a cohort, and they meet online regularly. They have a listserv that they can follow and ask one another questions. And so they've kind of built a community of practice around the digital navigator work. So this next slide shows where clients need the most assistance. As you can see, the top 6 things that people need help with are setting up an email address, applying for a job, learning to use a new device, accessing government services, using ebooks from the library, and accessing healthcare. This brings us back to the goal of digital inclusion in the first place. Why are we doing all of this work? And the goal is digital equity. Digital equity is a term that we've been using probably since 2020 or even longer, but it's where everyone has the technology and digital skills necessary for civic, cultural participation, for employment, for lifelong learning, and access to essential skills. So as more of the government forms go online, healthcare, people need access to this. It's just not because it's nice. Now it's required. Everyone needs access to these things. So you can see not everyone has them. And so this is where we call it a digital divide. A digital divide exists between those that have it and those that do not. Very recently, the federal executive branch cut the digital equity funds, which is a huge disappointment, and reduces the funding for this work, and also leaves the status of, if you were here last year, I talked a lot about the digital equity plan in New York State. So it leaves the status of that digital equity plan kind of unknown and in limbo. So while these cuts don't directly affect us and our project, they limit the ability of grants and other resources for which we have applied for. So it's kind of left unknown. Despite this news, our programs continue to thrive thanks to the commitment from the 2 public library systems, Mid-Hudson, RCLS, several of legislative grants, the digital navigators themselves, and Carolyn's leadership. So we are fortunate to have this financial support, which will enable us to continue for one more year in 2025-26. So again, we need strength, fortitude, and resilience to continue this work as we try to close the digital divide. So some news about sustainability from Southeastern. We're very excited that we joined the Sustainable Libraries Initiative through the New York State Library Association. We did that last January, and the board approved that. And the first project that we're working on is the grant-funded project, Turning the Page for Pollinators. So thanks to this funding and Sarah's leadership and master gardening skills, we are completely transforming the Southeastern property and landscaping. So if you haven't been by our building in a while, or if you drive by there on a regular basis, you will see some major changes. In addition to creating a space to support pollinators, this project will demonstrate the process and serve as a model for other libraries. We will grow and plant site-appropriate native plants to support pollinator life cycles. We're going to reduce our our reliance on gas-powered lawn equipment and actively steward commercial land to support pollinators. So we really want to show you how you can transform a commercial space into something that looks different than what you might normally see. There will be numerous opportunities to participate in this project starting in a few weeks when Sarah and Moshe host the facilities SIG featuring a wildflower presentation and tour. Then in late June, we're going to need your help preparing for the wildflower meadow. So there are going to be many more opportunities to, assist us with this project. And then people who come will also learn about creating their own pollinator-friendly landscaping. Moshe is documenting the entire project on a LibGuide and a blog, so you can follow along on our progress. So on the table, everyone has a packet of wildflower seeds. If you noticed those when you came in and sat down, there should be one for everyone. If you follow the QR code on the packet, you'll find instructions for how to plant them, as well as guidance on starting a native wildflower garden. So it is a little bit more than just sprinkling them on the ground. Sarah did a great job on there explaining the best way to maximize the usage of that packet of seeds. So beginning in July, governing and HRVH member organizations will have online access to the foundation directory. So if those of you who know the foundation directory, the company Candid is very restrictive about online access. Before we had this access, a bunch of public libraries have it, which is awesome, but it's usually on-site only for the foundation directory. That's kind of how been their model over the years. So this is an opportunity to really have access to it. So each dues-paying member of Southeastern is eligible for a user login. And as I mentioned in the most recent newsletter, the agreement we have with Candid is for access by library staff. This is not for public or student use or like wider organizational use if your organization's bigger than a library. It's meant to be a resource for you to identify and pursue grant opportunities. So if you haven't signed up already, I encourage you to do so. We have many more spots for our governing members to sign up. So I really encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. So I want to show you where we're obtaining some of our additional funding support. We have been fortunate to receive 5 legislative appropriation grants from New York State senators and assembly members, the biggest supporter being Senator Michelle Hinchey. We've also received the Connect All grant to analyze the digital navigator data, which will provide recommendations for us moving forward for that project. And 2 foundation grants, one from the Partners for Climate Action for the Pollinators Project, and we just received a grant from the Dyson Foundation to support our strategic planning work. So this additional support is greatly appreciated. And I would like to mention that Liz, our finance manager, she manages the finance for all of these, which is when she started this job, we didn't have all this extra work. So now this is part of her job to help with some very complicated reimbursement grants that we have. All right, so Carolyn every year puts together a lovely year in review. So I want to encourage you to take a look at it. It's attached from the list of where that original agenda QR code goes to. It provides a comprehensive overview of all of our services. They're all listed in there with usage data, including a full list of all of our members, and as well as all of our audited financial statements. If you want to see those, that's where they are. It also is an excellent source to share with new staff who are onboarding at your organization, and you want to tell them a little bit about who Southeastern is and what we do. So I'm going to conclude with some thank yous. So Sarah put together this beautiful graphic last year, and I'm repurposing it because it's so good. It illustrates the groups that collaborate to govern, advise, and manage our programs and services, ensuring the smooth operation and communication among all of them. So I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge all the individuals represented here and their contributions to supporting Southeastern, starting with trustees. So we currently have 13 volunteers who serve 5-year terms to help govern the council. Yes, that's 5 years, 5-year terms. The state requires 5-year terms. So I want to thank them for their leadership, knowledge, and guidance. So I want get ready to move or raise your hand or shake or stand up. But I want all trustees, current, past, and nominated to stand so we can give them a round of applause. Thank you. Committee members are the dedicated volunteers who collaborate with staff and trustees to inform 5 key service areas. So it's CE, EDI, digitization, hospital library services, and resource sharing. So could everyone who is a chair or a member of an advisory committee please stand and be recognized? I know some of you are here. Okay. We had a little fun last summer. I went on a field trip to one of our members, which is we just decided we're going to start taking advantage of all these great member locations we have. And we went to the Hudson River Maritime Museum. And then as an added bonus, we went out to the lighthouse. So we have a very dedicated staff who've been with Southeastern for at least 7 years. And some of us have been with Southeastern for up to 25 years. And we have a combined total of 111 years of service to Southeastern. So could all of the staff, Jen, Zach, Carolyn, Moshe, Liz, Kelsey, and Sarah, please stand so we can recognize you. So we've looked at some of our challenges, including our ability to be patient, strong, and resilient, as well as our initial steps towards sustainability. We're so honored to work with you. We really are honored to work with you on these projects and really look forward to collaborating with you on the year ahead. So thank you. All right, Kirsten, you're up. It's my pleasure to welcome Kirsten Carter. Kirsten is the chair of the Board of Trustees Officer and Nominating Committee, and she will present that committee's report. Yes.
All right, thank you, Tessa. So it's my honor to report the results of the trustee election. And thank you to the governing members who participated in the online election. So on behalf of the Trustee and Officer Nominating Committee, I'm pleased to report that 4 people have been elected to Southeastern's Board of Trustees. The newly elected trustees are Kimberly Hooper, School Library System Coordinator of Rockland Bosse's School Library System, and representing school libraries for a 5-year term, 2025 through 26 through 2029 and 30. Grace Riario, Executive Director, Ramapo Catskill Library System, representing public library systems for a 5-year term, 25-26 through 29-30. And we have Beth Zambito, Assistant Director, Finkelstein Memorial Library, representing public libraries for a 5-year term, 25-26 through 29-30. And lastly, Ann Deutsch, Director of the Library at Dutchess County Community College, representing academic libraries to complete an unexpired term for 25-26 through 27-28. So congratulations to all newly elected trustees who will start their terms July 1st. Now I'd like to announce the slate of officers for the 2025-26 Board of Trustees. And that would be Becky Albitz for President, Grace Riario, Vice President, Lori Shedrick, Secretary, Christy Lee, Treasurer, Floyd Lattin, Assistant Secretary, Treasurer. And we'll have that vote later today at the final meeting for this annual Board of Trustees meeting schedule. So let's thank our colleagues who volunteered their time and their expertise to serve as officers on the board. Thank you all very much.
Okay. So at this time, we would like to acknowledge outgoing members of the Board of Trustees. Gina. Where's Gina? Okay. Come on up. What was that? Yes. There we go. So I'd like to recognize former trustee Gina Trask. Gina served as a trustee from 2018 until February of this year. We thought we had her for a few more years as a trustee, but she changed jobs from Mount St. Mary College to being the course development manager at MediaSource. Gina is the most recent past president of the board, where she helped us develop a communication guidelines and a trustee handbook, among other wonderful things that she did as board president. In addition to her leadership, she provided as a trustee. Her contributions include her role with the Educator Lab. It's a pre-pandemic wonderful program. One of them was here that you guys did for, I think, 3 years. It was a high school to college transition program, and she also really helped out with the banned book symposium. So thank you, Gina. As a parting gift, the staff have created a read picture for Gina, and we'll bring that over in a second. In the photo, Gina is holding a copy. I mean, she can show it to you if she wants to. But in the photo, she's holding a copy of The Stinky Cheese Man. So Gina, do you want to say a few words or not? You don't have to? Sure. Okay. Sure. Good.
Well, these are my impromptu words to say thank you to Tessa for her leadership of Southeastern, to all the trustees, past and current, that I've served alongside. My experience at Southeastern Southeastern has been immensely enriching for me personally and professionally. And although I wanted to move on in my career, I knew that I would be sad to leave Southeastern. So I'm glad that I can continue in my capacity at Media Source to have a connection with libraries. So thank you so much.
I have a microphone from another minute. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge Becky and her service to Southeastern. When she became board president, we established monthly meetings, and every month we were going to review the agenda and all the things that we need to talk about in the next month. Well, those meetings became weekly meetings and then sometimes twice a week meetings. So I think she got more time with me than she signed up for. But she put her name forward for a second year as president, which you see, and we greatly appreciate that. And so thank you for your time and dedication to Southeastern in this leadership role. And I have a little certificate for you. Just wanted to say public thank you. Oh. I'm falling down on the job. I got Harris University right. Yeah.
One of the great challenges of the year for many of us, unfortunately. So Jen, I'm delighted to have Jen come up here and to present the Twila Snead Award.
Right. Okay. Hi, everybody. Put my glasses on so I can read. Okay. It is my pleasure to present the Twila Snead Commitment to Excellence Award. The award is named in memory of Twila Snead, who served as the medical library manager at St. Luke's Cornwall Hospital in Newburgh, New York for 20 years. And I am the 25-year Southeastern member, so I remember Twila. Twila's demonstrated professional commitment, hard work, and dedication to continuous improvement established the framework that inspired this award for excellence in librarianship. This annual award, now in its 11th year, honors outstanding and excellent individuals, organizations, or programs. This year's award selection committee unanimously agreed that the recipient met the award criteria for leadership in creating a new or enhanced service model that other libraries or cultural organizations can emulate, creation of an innovative program or collection that enhances the lives of the organization's constituents, and provision of a service to the community that is not available from any other library, archive, cultural heritage organization, or library system. I am pleased to announce the recipient of the 2025 Twila Snead Commitment to Excellence Award is Historic Huguenot Street for their leadership role in the New Paltz Historic Documents Project. I'll call you up in a minute. All right. The New Paltz Historic Documents Project is a collaborative, multi-year, and federally funded project to conserve, digitize, and provide online access to early documents from the archives at Historic Huguenot Street and their partner organizations, which are the Town of New Paltz, the Haviland Hyde Historical Collection at Elting Memorial Library, and the Reformed Church of New Paltz. I'm going to refer to Historic Huguenot Street as HHS from here on out. HHS was awarded 3 rounds of funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities to support this project, starting with a planning grant in 2018, followed by 2 implementation grants. They also received funding from the Dutch Culture USA program by the Consulate General of the Netherlands in New York to support the translation of some of the Dutch documents. I'm not sure how difficult it is to get funding from the Dutch Culture USA program, but I do know how difficult it is to get funding for digitization from the NEH. So that alone, bravo. HHS has coordinated all of the project activities, including project planning, grant writing, grant management, vendor communication and coordination, including driving these fragile, precious, valuable, unique documents back and forth to Philly, to the conservation and digitization vendor. I'm looking at you, Donna. They've also coordinated all of the metadata creation and the digital preservation for their team. So developing digital collections is labor intensive, as many of you know. Organizations of all size have capacity issues when it comes to this work. HHS's leadership and centralization of the activities greatly reduced the workload on their partner institutions. They have executed this project flawlessly, which is especially remarkable given the relatively small size of all of the partner institutions. You know, small but mighty, but this, I mean, from where I sit, flawless execution of this project. Okay, to date, there are over 4,800 documents totaling 31,000 pages available online at New York Heritage. They date from the 1600s to the early 1900s. They include family papers, some spanning multiple generations, and also financial and legal records, municipal records, church records, and more. I want to specifically acknowledge their exemplary metadata records. For those of you who have worked with me, you know that good metadata makes my heart go all aflutter. And this is really this project. Metadata unlocks the value of your resources and can unlock the value that can be hidden in resources. So their attention to exposing the stories of the non-Europeans hidden in these documents is worthy of recognition. The project team purposefully and respectfully described and indexed documents that reference enslaved people and indigenous peoples. They also indexed materials on broad themes like poverty, social history, and women's lives. These indexing terms are in all the records, and they're also on a companion website they built for the project. So if you go to the New Paltz Historic Documents Project website and click the page for key subjects, you'll see a whole list of these terms and more. So other things you might find like farming and military and war, but you'll find those other subjects that kind of bring things together. So awesome. Love it. Okay, so the New Paltz Historic Documents Collection is one of the most accessed Southeastern member collections in New York Heritage. According to Google Analytics, the collection has received over 135,000 page views, and visitors average 43 page views per visit, which is quite impressive, and they spend an average of 15 minutes engaging with the collection. And for someone who's monitored digital collection stats for 20 years, that's really impressive. And it's not just me and you all, okay? It's more. So, so I want to I have one more thing to say after this quote, but I want to sum up my remarks by quoting from a report written by Firth Fabend and David William Voorhees, who are two scholars who were brought in during the planning phase to assess the collection and help select materials for their research value. And here's what they said about the materials that now make up this collection. They provide a unique record of the lives of all members of the community: Native American, European, and African, male, female, and children, enslaved and free, rich, middling, and poor. It is particularly rich in detailing the early settlement and history of the Mid-Hudson River Valley and its relation to the wider English colonial Atlantic, slavery and the post-emancipation, the American Revolution and Civil War, the antebellum period, and the Reconstruction era. It is rare to find such a depth of historical information in one community relating not just to local history, but also to the national and international historical record. They just said it better than I could, but that is a summary of what you're going to find here. So just to wrap up, the project team's careful selection of materials and the words used to describe them is a gift to scholars, historians, your New Paltz community, and the larger public. So well done. Congratulations on your much-deserved award, and you can all come up now. Oh, but before you do, I also, while I'm at the microphone, can you bring me up the other microphone? Because we'll walk over there. I'll give you your beautiful sculpture or crystal from us. We also have a proclamation from Senator Michelle Hinchy's office for you all, honoring historic Huguenot Street upon the occasion of receiving the 2025 Twila Snead Award for Excellence from the Southeastern New York Library Resources Council. I'm not going to read all of the whereases. You can do that yourself. So thank you. Come on up, Tina. Does this work? Oh, definitely did. All right. So proclamation. Okay, whoever wants to take that. And this is your crystal from Southeastern. It's very heavy, but it's beautiful. It says all the things on it. So this microphone is for you all if anybody wants to say some words, but you don't.
I'll just say thanks to Jen so much for that introduction. She covered a lot of what I might have said. Yeah, I don't know, I think we started this in 2017, so it's been a lot of planning and a lot of work. And Jen and Tessa and Zach and Smith-Aldrich have been there from the very beginning and really helped make it possible. A lot of people have been involved over the years. Carrie Almendinger, our former archivist, partners who are with staff and volunteers who are no longer involved, but for the Reformed Church, Reverend Mark Mast and Kevin Cook. For the town supervisor, Neil Battez, former town supervisor, and the town clerk, Rosanna Mazzacari Rosenkrantz. And who did I mean? Oh, my goodness. And of course, Evelyn Hyde Historical Collection at the Elting Library, Carol Johnson and Margaret Stan. And they're still going strong with us, thank goodness. There's been some new people at the church who have contributed, and Philip Zacchio, sorry, and Reverend Aaron Schulte, who really helped make things possible. And of course, we have a new town supervisor, Amanda Gatto. And these two lovely ladies, Donna Dixon, our digital librarian and project manager, who's responsible for all that amazing metadata and the driving. And Beth Packus, we're so pleased she joined us now, 2 years ago, almost, as our archivist and librarian. And Beth has added a lot and really enhanced the project through her extensive work with finding aids and updating and writing new ones that were much needed. So it's been a real wonderful project to work with them both. And I wanted to say the website that Jen mentioned, newpaltzhistory.org, because we have so many scholars who have served as advisors. I'm not going to name them all, but you can find their names there. It's an international group. We have scholars in Dutch and French history, early American history. We've worked with a representative from the Stockbridge-Munsee tribe of Mohicans, as well as most recently Kate Himes with the Margaret Wade Lewis Center for Black History and Culture. So those are just a few people, but please check that out. There's a lot of background. There's actually links to some talks. There's some examples of some of the research that's been done that we're continuing to do. There's some incredible research that other scholars have contributed, and we're looking forward to continuing building on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Dr. Becky.
Thank you so much, Jen. And now it's time for us to take a 15-minute break, only 15 minutes. So expect to see you back here at 10:45.
Yeah, we're able to have more coffee and a second breakfast and some networking. All right, so now it's time for Rebekkah's presentation. So it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Rebekkah Smith-Aldrich. Rebekkah is a executive director at the Mid-Hudson Library System. In addition to her leadership role at Mid-Hudson, she is the co-founder of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. Rebekkah writes regularly about sustainability, and she is a columnist for Library Journal. So I went and read a bunch of them last week. They're great articles if you have a chance to find them. She's written 3 books on this topic and gives talks at libraries and other organizations around the world related to sustainability. She's local. This is her home county and home system in Mid-Hudson. But some of you haven't had the opportunity yet to hear her speak on this topic. So you are in for a very informative and exciting hour with Rebekkah.
Oh, thank you very much. It's so nice to be invited to speak in my own backyard. I always say that it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. So unless I inflict myself on my own member libraries, it's a rare treat to speak here in the Hudson Valley. But I want to thank Tessa for the invitation to speak to you today and for her own focus and leadership on the topic of sustainability, because it is of critical importance to all of us in this moment. And so I just want to take a little breather here to acknowledge the moment that we are living through and echo the words that were spoken at the top of this presentation and this meeting here this morning by Bill, as he acknowledged the kind of chaotic times we're living through and the challenging times we're living through. And I understand that you are concerned about many things that are going on in the world here today. And it might be hard to focus in on this massive topic of sustainability and climate change. And oh my God, there's so many other things to be worried about right now. And I do want to say I am totally going to bum you out for like the first third of this presentation, but I promise to bring it around, make it as relevant as possible, and hopefully help you see that much of what you do right now is exactly what the world needs. Because we are critical infrastructure to our communities, and we are the answers that people are seeking in this moment, if only they would recognize us. So how many of you have been in that moment where someone was like, libraries, historical societies, people still need that? Don't they just use the internet? Anyone had to have that yeah, right? And we're all so patient and kind as we answer, but in our heads, we're visualizing like slapping them upside the head, like, yeah, welcome. So I just want to acknowledge here up front that it's a tough time right now, but the thing that can save us the most for our own mental well-being is recognizing where our own sphere of influence is. What can we control in this moment that feels so out of control? What do we influence in our own personal lives and our workplaces? And this is part of what I want to talk about here with you today, is to really give ourselves the gift of recognizing that, because we cannot fix it all. As frustrating as that is to many of us in this room, but where we can focus our energy is where we have that influence. And so thinking about very, very large topics like we're going to today is not to overwhelm you, but to help you see how perfectly positioned our organizations are in this moment and the leadership we can bring to the table that will make a difference and really shape the legacy that we have in our professional lives, as well as in the communications and the communities that we serve right now in this moment. So I just want to give that little preface of acknowledging that, like, yeah, it's like totally crazy right now. And I'm going to like make it even worse here at the beginning. So like I said, bear with me. This is where I'm starting. But I don't know if you've noticed, but climate change is real. We caused it. People are very concerned. It's getting worse. These are all very concerning things that for many years people have put on the back burner and hoped somebody else was taking care of it. But now it is in our homes, right? Now you are seeing the effects of this on a regular basis. This week alone, we're smelling wildfire smoke again from Canada. We're watching flooding in Houston. We're seeing all sorts of crazy weather. We're recognizing hurricane season's about to start, even if the director of FEMA doesn't know that's a thing. And what we're going to see here, unfortunately, and this is kind of was a tipping point during COVID, which most people missed it because of COVID. But climate scientists have recognized that there is no going back at this point. We have missed the boat several times to turn things around. This will be the reality of what we're managing now moving forward for at least the next 30 years, even if we did everything textbook right on the climate change mitigation front. So yeah, there's still work to do on climate change mitigation. We're going to talk about that today, but we also have to confront the reality of adapting in the face of this new reality of increasingly severe weather. And the damage it can do to the infrastructure that houses our precious people and collections to make sure we can carry out our missions. And that's part of what we're going to talk about here today. But I wanted to give you 2 reference points to kind of understand the volume of what we're dealing with here. You might be familiar with the term billion-dollar disaster, which is definitely an American term I've learned throughout my presentations around the country and world. But I'm hoping you're familiar with that, right? Enough damage has been done because of a weather event or a climate hazard event to cause $1 billion worth of damage. There's been a 78% increase since the 1980s in billion-dollar disasters. So we went from $1 billion disaster every 82 days in the 1980s to the current day we're seeing one every 18 days, which is why you feel like you're hearing about it more, because you are, right? Those are devastating things that are disrupting lives, harming businesses. Literally, I think life and limb are at risk as we think about some of the storms and the climate hazards that we're dealing with. So it's nothing to be putting our heads in the sand about at all. We have to acknowledge the context within which we are operating in our communities and the realities that our constituents are trying to live their lives in as well. So in 2021, again, I know it was the heat of COVID, but every single medical journal across the world ran the same editorial with a call to action for the medical community to recognize that every single child alive today will be negatively impacted by climate change. How many of you have a young person in your life that you care a lot about? All right, I got like half the room. All right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Most of us, maybe you're motivated by like your dog or your cat. That's cool too. I'm just saying we have a lot of people in our lives that we care a lot about that are going to be negatively impacted, even if we ourselves have found ways to manage in the face of what's going on. So the urgency behind this needs to pick up the pace. And it's not that we haven't been thinking about it and going in the right direction. It's the urgency that's been missing behind it that's getting complicated by the current administration once again. So as we think about other fun stuff that's going on in the world today, we're obviously fractured as a globe, right? We're not seeing the togetherness and the kumbaya nature that we thought would come out of COVID when we all pulled together to flatten the curve, right? That did not last very long, if ever even actually exist. And so as we look at this World Economic Forum report, which is this not very happy report that comes out every year, but tells us all what to be most concerned about. And I've used it for years in my presentations because they have always said for the past 10 years, short-term, long-term, biggest risk is climate change. And it bolsters what I'd like to talk about. This year, for the first time ever, climate change was unseated as the biggest short-term threat to us. And check out what number 1 is: AI-generated misinformation and disinformation, which is also in our world, in our sphere. So as we think about how we're carrying out our work, how we are thinking about the future, designing for the future of our buildings, our services, our programs, our partnerships, where is the funding coming from? We are sitting at the nexus of what is very critical to society in this moment. So while yes, these are challenging things, it's also, I hate to say it, an opportunity for us to step in and be leaders of these conversations, partners, and how we help people understand the past to predict the future. But it is also a heavy weight to carry as we move forward. And so modeling what the medical profession did, we did a similar call to action in 2022 at the American Library Association, calling on library workers, cultural heritage organizations to recognize this moment and understand that it is everyone's responsibility to understand what's going on, how it will create obstacles to carrying out our mission and vision for the future, and really starting to build up the clearinghouse of exemplars, people who are doing great work in this area that we can learn from and use as a platform to move forward from. Many of the resources I'm pointing out for you, Carolyn, I don't know when she had the time to do it, but she put them on the website that you have the QR code for at the beginning of the meeting here today. And I'll make sure you have the slides as well after this. But in 2019, we actually convinced the ALA Council to make sustainability a core value of our profession. And that was a big, big lift. When I went to library school, no one ever mentioned the core values of librarianship to me. I don't know anyone else my age learned about that. But when we made the case for sustainability to become a core value, we tied it with a need to teach the core values in library school now. So I'm meeting more and more people who are coming out of library school who actually know more about this, which is fabulous and actually shows this worked. But we really presented to ALA Council, anyone who's been to ALA Council, if you're going to the ALA convention coming up in Philadelphia, poke your head in and imagine what it's like to build consensus among 180 counselors at ALA. It was quite the campaign to get to this moment. But what it allowed for was now common vocabulary around what do we mean by sustainability? Why are we asking everyone to think about this? Why is it relevant to the viability and vitality of our libraries moving forward? And what we learned was that we needed to have that common vocabulary, because when you say the word sustainability, people's heads were going in all different directions. So for 20 of my 27 years at the Mid-Hudson Library System, I viewed my responsibility as making sure my member libraries were relevant and responsive, and when they put their budgets up for a vote, they would pass. And so I've constantly been trained for 27 years to consistently think about what is the value we are bringing to our communities? How well are we aligned with their values? Why would they ever vote yes to tax themselves more for library services? Which is a big part of how we came at this topic, to build more consensus, to do better work in here, because I think I had spent about 10 years presenting at NYLA on greening your library, and there'd be like 3 people in the audience who were very excited. But it was not quite the breadth and reach I was hoping for at the time. And the turning point was when we actually defined sustainability. And what we did is we used what's called the triple bottom line definition of sustainability, which is borrowed from an economist named John Elkington. He wrote a book for the business community called Cannibals with Forks, which is not a great read, but it's an interesting concept, trying to teach the business community that you can't just always look at the bottom line, or you'll run out of natural resources and you'll burn out your workers. And what if you created a more balanced approach to business? And interestingly enough, it mapped well for us as well. Often we're asked to just do things on the cheap as, economically as possible. We're all very conscientious about the money that's entrusted to us. We want to be good stewards of it. But at the end of the day, being good stewards of something is not just an economic activity. You also need to be aware of the natural resources you're using and the environmental impact you're having by the choices you make in your institution, things you buy, where do they go at the end of their useful life, and who are the humans that are impacted along the way of that supply chain, from places where people live that are harvested for materials that make things, people themselves who are the workers who make those things, people who are affected by communities where things are disposed of. We are all part of that and need to own more responsibility in making decisions in a more ethical way. Who better than the library and GLAM community to be doing this work and modeling what this can look like? We're smart people who were already most of the way there anyway. We get very little credit for doing much of what we do and doing it in the right way. And so the other part of the strategy here was not only to be leaders on this topic, but to get the recognition of what we are doing, which is in this moment what the world is calling for and what younger generations are looking for and will judge our generation on moving forward. So this was a huge tipping point. When we got this defined and people started moving forward with this understanding, the pace of the work began to pick up, because the goal overall is a collective impact strategy, because each of us is doing very important work. But if we all pull together, like Tessa was describing in this very organization, when you all work together to make good things happen, you can go further than you can by yourself. What if we did that as a society? Maybe even across the globe, we could do some pretty amazing things. That is no small feat to achieve, but if we each take responsibility in our own sphere of influence, really great stuff happens, like Southeastern, like the Mid-Hudson Library System, like the New York Library Association. We make big, good things happen. So as a profession, helping people all start to pull in the same direction has been a goal of ours for over 12 years. When I say us each time, I'm referring to the Sustainable Libraries Initiative, which I'll explain in a minute. But we subscribe to the idea that every job is a climate job. No matter what sector you're in, what your role is in an organization, we all have to take personal responsibility to understand that we all are making decisions that have an impact on the natural world, as well as the bottom line of our organizations and the human health of people who are local and global. And so writing that into job descriptions, owning that, seeing that reflected in our strategic goals and how we evaluate how well we're doing as organizations, this has been the push for now over a decade to help more of our organizations step into this space, be recognized for this work, and to actually make a difference in our communities in a way that goes beyond the traditional way that we are viewed, which sometimes is to our advantage and sometimes is not. So when we say climate job, your brain is probably kind of processing that. Like, what does that look like? What are we talking about? And so I wanted to unpack the idea of climate action for you because it looks differently to different people, particularly what generation you're in and what you came up in during Earth Day and what that looked like. But climate action is a very complex activity that speaks to the systemic nature of climate change and how really it's driven by economics at the end of the day, and a number of policy decisions that have been made for 200 years that really aren't very friendly to humans overall. So when you think about climate action, it's actually made up of three main components. One is the very traditional thing that we are all very used to thinking about over the past 50 years or 55 years now of going through Earth days, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, because that's what's been warming the Earth and driving climate change and making that severe weather worse and worse and worse. And I know I just said 2 minutes ago that we can't do anything about it in our lifetime. It's not going to change anything now, but we care about those younger people, the folks coming up behind us. So we still have that responsibility to be pushing down greenhouse gas emissions. So 50 years from now, it's not as bad as it is predicted to be at this point. The secondary part here, which we mentioned before, is adjusting and preparing in the face of what we're now seeing and how that could negatively impact our world. So we're going to unpack each of these ideas for you while we're together today. But the unfortunate truth is we have to think about all of these things at once, which is very complicated. But we don't have the luxury of just picking and choosing which one we're working on, because all three of these things need attention. The third is honestly the most important, and I'll say that several times here this morning, which is doing this work in a way that builds empathy, respect, and understanding for our neighbors, for our communities, and hopefully for the wider world in general. Because at the end of the day, if we actually just had more empathy, respect, and understanding for one another, we wouldn't be where we are in this moment. So thinking about the ability for communities to work together and solve some of the problems that we're currently confronted with, it starts at home. It starts in buildings like the ones you work in. It starts through the programs that you create that help bring people together, learn about their history, understand where our communities have been, and where we want to go together as a community, small or large. So the work that we're doing with sustainability, with mitigation, adaptation, all needs to be done through this lens of justice to make sure when we're making good decisions, they really respect everyone in the sphere of that decision that we're making. So this is very difficult to do. I'm not here to say it's an easy thing to do. I've had people let me know that after my presentations, they've spent 2 hours in the grocery store trying to pick out toothpaste because there's a lot of choices and they're trying to understand where do the ingredients come from and what's best for the environment going down the drain. And they really go down the rabbit hole. And I've done it myself. So every little choice we make, right, you start to see it spider out and recognize, oh my God, that's connected to so many different things. But I think the goal is just to do better tomorrow than we did yesterday. We're not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress. And once you see some of these systems and how they're interconnected, you can't unsee them. And so practicing of making decisions in a way that's better for, bottom line, human health and the natural environment takes practice. And that's a lot of what the Sustainable Libraries Initiative is about, is trying to figure out how do you untangle this massive web of economic theory and policy and human health issues and hundreds of years of treating people poorly. How do you fix that, right? You can't do that overnight. That's going to take a generation to undo, untangle, or make progress in. But I was tired of not doing anything. Anyone else ever feel like that? You're like looking around going, this sucks. Can't we make this better? And then you realize, oh, I got to do something. I have to take responsibility. I have to step into that space. And that's where the Sustainable Libraries Initiative came from, was someone who actually used to work in the Hudson Valley, Matthew Bollerman. He used to be the director of the Kingston Library. I reconnected with him like many, many years after he was the director at the Kingston Library. And we found out we were both really interested in sustainable design of buildings. We ended up going to a conference together and taking a train ride back to the Hudson Valley together. And we had this conversation of like, why aren't libraries better at this? And we're like, yeah, we really should be better at this. Well, we start bitching and moaning and complaining about it. And by the end of the train ride, we realized that he was NYLA president and I was on NYLA council, and maybe we could do something about that. And so the journey began. We're now in our 10th year of operations. We have over 7,000 libraries participating in the program, over 200 libraries in what's called the Sustainable Libraries Certification Program, which Tessa has been knocking on the door of since day one. And I'm pleased to announce that I've just turned in the final version. So in less than a month, you'll now be able to get to that checklist. But it's been an amazing journey where we've just keep finding like-minded people. We have over 30 partners across the library community, from ALA to Library Journal to the Association of Research Libraries. We've got 10 state libraries across the country, another dozen state library associations, all joining in and trying to figure out how do we do this work together and help not only save our libraries, but help be a part of saving our communities in a way that's very, very visible. So in the past 10 years, what we've learned across all of these experiences of libraries in this community of practice is that there's 4 key attributes to what we call a sustainable library. And you've got them itemized here. And I've got some examples here today to try to bring this to life for you. But number 1 has to be acting authentically. From the inside out of our organizations, we can't just be preaching outside of our organizations that this is the way things should be. We need to exemplify that in how we run our buildings, how we treat our staff, how we write our policies, how we run organizations like boards of trustees. All of these things must reflect a commitment to these core values that we claim we have. And doing that work positions us to be an excellent partner. And I'm here to speak from experience because I put my money where my mouth was, and we did this work in our own organization, the Mid-Hudson Library System. And I have dozens of stories I could tell you how it's resulted in new partnerships, new money appearing at our doorstep, barely without asking for it, which is an amazing, miraculous thing. But yeah, it's work, but it's the right work, right? When you feel like, yeah, I'm putting a lot of energy into something, you hope it's coming back to you in a format that makes a difference for the goals that you have for yourself. And this is really where it starts, from the inside out of our organizations. And then secondarily, we need to see more intentionality in our goal setting around the ideas of our work in civic engagement and creating more social cohesion within our communities. That's exactly what we are already doing, folks. But is it built in, baked into our strategic plans? Are we devoting resources that further accelerate that work with more urgency moving forward? Because it has absolutely never been more important for people to come together, learn together, understand that people are not that different. Our values are not that different, that we're being manipulated by media, business, politicians, and we're forgetting what it's like just to be neighbors and create community together. And that's where we can bring people back home. That's where they can find their place in our world together with their neighbors through the programs and services that you are producing through your organizations. It's some of the most critical work to build the social infrastructure that is necessary to turn the ship around in terms of how people are behaving right now, which is something I know keeps me up at night. I don't know if anyone else is worried about that, just me and Patty, evidently. But it's a big, big topic right now. And so thinking about how we build that strategically into what we do, it's not a stretch, because that is what we do. We just need to be more intentional, make it more visible, bring more people along with us, partner up with people for better collective action. And we're going to see, I think, again, more people drawn like a magnet to what you are already doing for the most part, because they understand you're trying to create a world that matches the vision they have for what it would look like if it was going right. Now, the last 2 things here are the things you probably thought I was here to talk about, and I am, but I want to see more intentionality on libraries committing and GLAM organizations committing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and having very solid disaster preparedness plans, continuity of operations plans, because folks, it is coming. It is already here, and it is honestly going to get worse, and I am sorry to say that. But if you'd like to maybe not sleep tonight, I suggest you Google Smithtown Library flooding. Anyone seen this video already? 10 inches of rain in less than 4 hours completely overwhelmed their stormwater management system, flooded through the local history room, which has really the most impressive local history collection on Long Island. It was maybe not the best choice to have it in a sub-basement area of the building. But again, no one had ever seen rain like this. No one anticipated this was possible. And when you hear the director talk about it, they built this reinforced steel door for the local history room because they wanted to protect this very valuable collection. And when you see the video, the security footage is actually available. The security system lasted through most of the flooding, and the water built and built and built coming from the outside into this room and is pressing and pressing and pressing on this reinforced door. And let me tell you, that door held, but the drywall on either side did not. Wiped out the whole local history room. You can see the copy machine floating through the children's room, DVDs kind of like bobbing along in the waves, going across that building. That's not going to be unusual in the future to see that amount of rainfall coming down at once. We're already seeing it here in the Hudson Valley. Our stormwater systems are not designed for it. We've paved too much of our communities to absorb that amount of water back into the ground system. It's got to go somewhere, right? So, just think about where you house your collections, wander outside with an umbrella during the next heavy storm, watch where the water goes. Just get to know where the water goes, because someday it's going to go a lot in that direction and maybe too much in that direction. How vulnerable are our buildings? So we're going to talk a little bit about that while we're together today. Are you feeling light and fluffy yet? I know I didn't do it yet. I know we're getting there though. So Tessa, open bar, next annual meeting. Yeah. So last year we announced with the American Library Association the National Climate Action Strategy for Libraries, which has been on my wish list for over a decade. Because what I see across the country are libraries doing excellent work in all of these different areas, but not in a comprehensive, cohesive, deliberate way. We're not known for that. We're not seeing it done in a best practices way across the country. And we've built now the best practices through the Sustainable Libraries Initiative to the point where there's like really no excuse not to be adopting the climate action strategy into our own local strategic goals. And so this is exactly what I just described to you. Reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, being part of designing more resilience in our communities in the face of climate change, and using the transformative power of education to increase the empathy, respect, and understanding that people have for each other, thanks to the work that we do in our organizations. The strategy itself is literally 1 page long, and then there's another 19 pages in the document that talk about simple ways to implement this to make it more doable for people, make it more achievable, that it's doesn't feel so overwhelming and so weighty, and actually kind of looks fun. You're going to see examples from even libraries in the Hudson Valley reflected in this national document, because I feel our libraries here are leaders on this, and I wanted them to get the credit. You'll see Claudia Depkin at the Haverstraw, King's Daughters Haverstraw Library featured in this document, as well as school librarians, academic librarians doing great work on these topics that really I think people can relate to and see themselves reflected in. So breaking down these 3 areas of the National Climate Action Strategy, I just brought some examples for you because you can see what I'm talking about, although I think you've got a pretty good picture in this first category, because this is the thing we're all pretty familiar with at this point, which is the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. There's 3 key areas to focus energy in. These are the areas where the most greenhouse gases are emitted. Obviously, libraries are not the biggest polluters in the world, but industry is obviously, but we make decisions, right, that contribute to business and industry, and we participate in an economic system that is driven on more. So as we think through the built environment, transportation issues, and stuff, that's where the most greenhouse gas emissions are happening that we make decisions about in our organizations. So if you own your own building, or even if you lease or rent space, making sure we're thinking through how energy, electricity is being used. Are we able to use some type of renewable energy? These are all things that would have the biggest impact to reduce the carbon footprint of our organizations. But believe it or not, transportation is actually the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. And you might not have a fleet of vehicles like we do with the public library systems to deliver a lot of stuff, but you are participating in terms of asking things to be delivered to the library, bringing people to the library, sending staff places, and these may seem like small choices, but over time, not only do they add up, they also model behavior for others who are watching how you are expending their money and making decisions as an institution that benefits from public and private funding that people have entrusted to you. This is a nice example down in Westchester County, Hendrick Hudson Free Library. This is the first library in the world to be certified under the Sustainable Library Certification Program. And they have many of the features and attributes you would expect. You can see solar panels here on the front of the library, but they use their building almost as part of the collection. No decision they've made about the building is unlabeled. So you'll see this flat panel monitor is explaining solar, why they picked it, how much electricity it saves, how much money it saves, why the library picked that. In their rain garden, they explain why they did that, to manage more of the stormwater coming onto their property. What is this rain chain you have coming off the building? Oh, there's a little piece of signage there too. And the education has resulted in modeling throughout the neighborhood. And the director actually has pictures. She's worked at that library for over 30 years, and she happened to take pictures of community events over the years that captured houses in the neighborhood. And after the library made these choices, she can demonstrate, oh, more solar panels emerged. More rain chains are seen throughout the neighborhoods because people got the idea thanks to the library. AI is a rising concern, and you don't see it on that first slide because the measurement and scale and impact of it isn't completely known yet. I actually believe it will overtake waste management and possibly even transportation eventually in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So full disclosure, I am not trying to stifle innovation. I want you to understand how AI works. It is critical that you understand how AI affects our profession, but there is a high environmental cost to pay for using artificial intelligence. There's awareness to have of its use. I do not want it to deter you from using it, playing with it, creating really necessary graphics like the one I have here, but recognizing there's consequences to the choices that we make that are unseen many times, particularly with technology. So just a few little facts that will, again, maybe keep you up at night. I know I got the one in the middle is the one that got me. Every image uses as much energy as a full charge of your smartphone. And then you think of all the dumb images you've made with AI, right? You're like, oh my God. But when you think about the water, that's really where it's going to be even a bigger problem than energy, because we can create renewable energy sources that can power the electricity that's necessary for artificial intelligence. But where are we going to get more water, more potable water that is absolutely necessary? Some scientists have posited that we've hit peak water, potable water that, we need to survive. That stuff, that clear stuff we drink that we need to survive. Yeah. It'd be good if there was enough for humans before we cool down all of the plants that are powering artificial intelligence. Well, Lori said maybe, but I think that's pretty important. So there's an awareness rising, right, in the profession. And we're seeing now some more literature coming out. And this is a link available on Southeastern's website to help you think about this and on what choices you might want to make in the future. There's a new article in American Libraries that came out in April. They devoted their whole issue to sustainability. Sarah Tribble-Horms, the newest member of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative Board, and the latest library to be certified under the Sustainable Library Certification Program, which is the San Diego State University in California. But just that awareness. Who are we working with? How do we make choices about which vendors that we want to use? Educating yourself about labeling systems to make sure we're working with B Corps whenever possible, that we're thinking about, do they understand the environmental impact of what they're doing? Are they making more wise choices in the face of what they understand? Holding those we spend money with accountable. A big moment that was a wake-up call for me was when I saw the total amount of money public libraries spend in New York. Public libraries spend over $1 billion a year. We don't often think of ourselves as wealthy or rich, but together, $1 billion is being spent on public library service. That is major consumer influence. If we start asking our vendors to do better on this front, and more of us ask that vendor to do better on that front, you can see change affected by us being advocate consumers, not just consumers that are thoughtless about what we're buying and thinking, well, that's the way it's always been done. I guess that's all I can get. Ask the question. Ask your peers to ask the question. We did an experiment at ALA in 2013. We had 20 of us all went to a library card vendor and said, do you have anything made from renewable materials or biodegradable? And I went first and I got laughed at. The vendor was like, no. And I'm like, oh, and no plans to address that? No. By the 10th person, they were like, oh, that's a great idea. We'll write that down. By the 20th person, they said she was sweating. She was like, we're totally going to develop that. Absolutely. But it took 20 of us to get them to recognize the market was shifting, the values had shifted, and they had to respond to that. So don't be afraid to ask the question. Even if the answer is no, that is advocacy, that you ask that question. So Valencia College, second academic library to be certified in the country, and they did so in Florida, where they're legit not allowed to say climate change, equity, diversity, or inclusion. And they did all of this work. They reduced their carbon footprint, they increased the resilience of the students on campus, and they also were able to do equity, diversity, and inclusion work, because the work is the same regardless of what you call it. So these are just a couple of their outcomes that they did on the front of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This is a library with not a lot of money. They have 8 locations, and the buy-in that was necessary wasn't there at the beginning. But as they started to prove they cared about this, they were a leader on the topic. The librarian that we work with there, who you may have seen in Library Journal, Nardia Cumberbatch, she was named a mover and shaker last year. She now sits on the President's Advisory Council for Sustainability and their adherence to the Sustainable Development Goals because of the commitment they made to make this a priority, which has resulted in a pay scale study of the staff of the library, which has resulted in the library buildings being used as the demonstration sites for sustainable design technologies, which has resulted in the library not getting cut for the first time in 15 years. So that alignment with the campus's goals, a devotion of time and energy to that work, has repositioned the library and the profile it has on campus. And this is not an isolated story. Of the 45 libraries that are now certified, every single one has a similar story. So that idea of raising our profile, owning our space, and being confident about what we deliver as being what the world needs today is part of the work that's happening out of this project. I gave you just a brainstorm list of all the different things we could be thinking about on this front. This list is not exhaustive, but I wanted to point out that Web Junction partnered with us 2 years ago to produce a series. If you want to take a deeper dive on any of these topics, they're all linked on the list of links Carolyn put on the Southeastern website. So Concord Free Library, first library in Massachusetts to be certified. They are the first library, public library, to produce a sustainability plan, which you can totally crib from and see what kind of goals they had, what ideas they had. It just gets your juices flowing to understand like, oh, we could do that. Oh, that would fit nicely in our situation. Oh, the town's been thinking about that too. What if we help them with that? That's what Concord did. And again, similar success story of seeing more respect and more money flow to their organization for their alignment with other climate adaptation goals the municipality had. Climate change adaptation is really the most urgent work that we have to do after climate justice work, of course. But this idea of making sure we're protecting the collections and physical assets that we have, in addition to keeping our people safe, making sure our workers are safe and the folks that come to access our collections and services are safe, and being a partner in the community with the first responder community to help them understand us as an asset in these moments are really, really critical. And so the place to start is to not be worried about everything, but to find out what's most likely to impact your corner of the world. In the Hudson Valley, we're obviously going to see more severe weather more frequently. We will see more flooding. And believe it or not, the most deadly thing we're going to see are extended heat waves and more frequent extended heat waves, which is maybe the easiest thing for us to deal with, except for, well, I'll just share this little personal story. I've thought about this topic for a long time. I don't know if you can tell. But 20 years ago, I read this report from the United Nations that said we all need to become more heat resistant. And I was like, that's not me. I'm Irish. I was not built for this climate. And that was really motivating to me to do more work in this area because being more heat resistant, I don't think is in my makeup. So understanding what's actually likely to happen, where you are, assessing your site, like I mentioned before, like where is the water flowing, understanding the vulnerabilities of the built environment that you operate in is the first step. And then once you understand those, figuring out who else has that same vulnerability and how have they dealt with those issues to see what you can adopt, low-hanging fruit, or maybe more high-level investments. But knowing is half the battle, as G.I. Joe always said. The other massive thing we have to contend with, which you can't quite see yet, but is coming, is the massive amount of migration that is happening because of climate change. It's already happening. Folks that have been displaced in the island areas of Louisiana. We're seeing folks in the Houston area who've been hit by almost 2 hurricanes a year for the past decade. You're seeing folks start to migrate north, and the Northeast is actually the prime area to migrate to when you're looking for climate havens. The further upstate you go, the closer to the Great Lakes, the more desirable it is, but we're definitely seeing folks starting that move already, and the numbers are staggering. When we start to think about the impact of this, it's twofold. It's both folks that have not lived in our region coming to our region and needing to create community in this space in a very big way, but also the preservation of these stories and the explanations of the history behind what we're seeing in our region. That's a twofold, I think, approach to this idea of the Great Displacement and the role that cultural organizations will be playing moving forward. So we're actually doing a presentation with the New York State Archives on July 15th, if you want to think more about that with us. So adaptation happens on 2 fronts. It's the traditional disaster preparedness work that is necessary to understand what you need to salvage first if there's something bad about to happen. If you have an elevator in your building, making sure you leave it on the 2nd floor when a flood is predicted, like it is tonight. Little, just practical things in your built environment that need to be thought through before it happens, as well as business continuity planning, which we all got a crash course in during COVID, but thinking through the different scenarios of other things that might befall us and how will we keep our services going, because I'm pretty sure we're essential. And if we're essential, we need to keep delivering services. So what do we need? What redundancies do you need? What offsite storage do you need? What cloud storage needs do you need? You just heard Southeastern solving one of those problems for you. So really thinking through all of that so you can keep ticking regardless of what's coming, because you do know what's coming to some degree. And then the other side of this is community resilience and being a good partner in the face of this, which will start with your own staff, making sure your own staff is aware of climate hazards and being prepared so they might actually be able to come and help you in your organization if something happens in our region that affects you. But really, I think also it's the connectivity necessary in a community for everyone to understand what assets are available to the community in these moments of disruption, whether it's space or internet connections, or I don't know, information professionals that know how to navigate a website that will be critical to get the FEMA assistance that you need, which is what we saw happen after Hurricane Irene and then Superstorm Sandy. But at the end of the day, if people are unaware of what's available, that they don't care about their neighbors, that's the most damaging thing in the face of these climate hazards. So most of us, when we watch news, I hope we don't have too many disaster junkies in the audience, but I know I get sucked into it sometimes. When you just can't tear yourself away, I was watching what happened in Western North Carolina last year because I have family that lives there. And the devastation was, I just couldn't believe it. When you see a place you've actually been physically affected at that level, and you understand the scale and scope of what it's going to take. Our colleagues at FEMA for the past several years have told us they can't come in until they're invited in, and you need to be prepared locally to sustain yourself for at least 2 weeks in the aftermath of a major event like that. Very few people are prepared at that level. So how can we participate to help them be more aware? So preparedness in our libraries looks a variety of shapes and sizes. You've got this example from South Huntington. This is a director who came up in the ranks at her library during Superstorm Sandy, and she saw how important it was for that building to be open, and they couldn't open after Superstorm Sandy. The building was intact and fine. They just didn't have electricity. So they added the whole building generator to make sure they could open if that ever happened again. The other thing they noticed is the emotional toll that climate change and concern about it has, particularly not only on adults, but young people. And the trauma of Superstorm Sandy on Long Island has echoed for years, over a decade now. And the stories sometimes break your heart of kids having panic attacks when the lights go down in a movie theater because they think Sandy's coming back. And sometimes we don't realize too, as we talk about climate change, what children are hearing, what level of it they understand. Are adults actually in control anymore? Sometimes I think kids don't think we are. So how do we make them feel more confident? How do we introduce them to first responders outside of a crisis moment? So we're building those relationships and the respect necessary in a community to help more people feel comfortable to come together before and after these events that are predicted. New York State has a wonderful Citizen Preparedness Corps program that's free. You can have that brought in for a workplace training, for a community training. You can be the host. You can go attend it with a partner that you've brought in. But it's very, very good. And I think it helps workers in particular think it through before something happens, as well as sparks ideas for things you should be thinking about in your organization as well. We have a partnership, or we don't, many of our libraries have a partnership with Bard College to help get more local data on heat and air quality indexes. What you're seeing happen at the federal level of eviscerating the science community, NOAA in particular, you're starting to see forecasters, meteorologists on major news sources start to say, I don't have the data I need to make the accurate predictions of if this storm is going to risk your life or not. So getting more local data through citizen science or participatory science programs is going to be critical moving forward. We are good partners for that kind of work. But also the attention to extreme heat. As we said, that is the #1 threat to human health in the Hudson Valley moving forward. What are some easy things we can do to participate in that, whether it be a cooling center or make sure people know where the cooling centers are through work we do to get that word out. Food security will be a large issue moving forward as well, as we saw disrupted very quickly during COVID. These are examples of libraries that do food programming, edible landscaping. There's a library near Syracuse that has a library farm. They lend out half the land to patrons who borrow it with their library card. The other half is community-supported agriculture. Yes, they have a policy about no cannabis. These are two examples of libraries that are participating in make-a-thons, repair cafes, fix-it clinics, empowering people to fix their own stuff and work together while doing it. This is an academic example from North Carolina State. This is a Saratoga library doing a repair cafe. I bet a lot of you are familiar with the repair cafe because the Hudson Valley actually has the most repair cafes outside of the Netherlands where the program was founded, which I always think is pretty cool. But what I like the most about this program, and I will admit it is my favorite sustainability program of all time, because I think it models exactly what we hope would happen on a larger scale, which is community members helping their neighbors fix things. And maybe in this case, it's the zipper on your winter jacket or your lamp. But what if we could fix bigger things together and actually be glad to do that with each other? And this is what that program really models in our community. So if you haven't checked this out, the vibe in the room is truly a cafe. Like people are hanging out, they're chatting, they're getting to know their neighbors. It does so many good things all at once. This is a program here in the Hudson Valley with the same funder that has funded the Southeastern Pollinator Garden, the Climate Partners of Hudson Valley. This is the group that called me and asked me if I would like $30,000 and what would I do with it. And I was like, well, I have a list. And they funded the Library of Local throughout the Hudson Valley. We now have this in several locations, 17 actually, across the Mid-Hudson Library System, with specialized collections on food security, climate solutions, seed libraries, garden lending tools. Our second round of this is mapped with climate smart communities throughout New York to help accelerate the work of those municipal committees trying to make their whole community more resilient in the face of climate change. It's been a great success, and we just got the check for year 3. So we'll be focused on disaster preparedness work coming up this fall. Climate justice, as I said, most importantly, and possibly the lowest hanging fruit of anything I'll talk about while we're here together today. This book is by Eric Kleinenberg, who you may be familiar with. He wrote the book Palaces for the People, which is an ode basically to libraries as social infrastructure. His first book was based on his research in Chicago, which identified the mortality rates of neighborhoods in an extended heat wave. And his research demonstrated that those communities that were closer knit together had a higher survivability rate than more wealthy communities that felt that they were fine on their own. The closer knit communities, they knew who to check on, they knew who didn't have air conditioning, they were bringing each other water if they were working outside, whereas the wealthier communities were kind of like, I'm fine over here by myself. And you saw a higher death rate in those communities. So as we think about the social engineering that's been done to design many of the communities that we operate in, there's work to be done to help more people come together. And if you took no pictures at all today, this is actually the one slide to take a picture of, because this is the key to all of it. This is the answer, in my opinion, and my experience over the past 27 years. The more we get people out of their homes, connecting with each other, feeling a sense of purpose, feeling a sense of community. We're going to see folks with less anxiety, less mistrust. I don't know if you know this, but only 13% of Americans trust their neighbors right now. That's got to change if we want to see other big things change. And this is a very simple formula to help with that. I could obviously talk for much longer than they've given me this morning about that. So I just want to point out tons of resources that we've done with Web Junction as well as on the Sustainable Libraries website to help you learn more about all of this stuff. These are different ideas in this area as well. But to wrap up here, at the end of the day, what we're asking you is not to fill out a checklist, even though I do ask you to fill out a checklist in the certification program. But what we need to see is people's mindsets change. We have to think differently about the choices we're making for the future and do so with intentionality that will have the outcomes that match the vision we have for a stronger community moving forward. So I'm not looking backwards at all at this point. All I want to see is what you can do from this point forward with the capacity that you have, the resources you have, and the gumption you have to go forward perhaps in a slightly different way than you have in the past. So this idea of start where you are, use what you can, do what you can from where you are today. No recriminations. Lori said to me when I sat next to her today, I forgot my water bottle in the car. I don't care. That's okay. Remember next time, right? Let's go forward. Let's just move forward and do better going forward. So just a few resources for you to point out if you want to follow up on some of this stuff from the Sustainable Libraries Initiative, which I've mentioned probably 100 times in 45 minutes. This is the Roadmap to Sustainability. It's a mobile app that actually OCLC helped build for us at no charge, so yay OCLC. This is a place for you personally to gather your thinking around this and kind of marshal your resources and think through how you're going to move forward on this topic. Those of you that are like, I already know all this stuff, I'm there, I need to go further faster, like Tessa, you're talking about the Sustainable Library Certification Program, which is an online program, 140 actions. It's designed for academic, public, and school libraries right now, and we're in development on the 3Rs version and a special libraries version and an individual version. Those are all coming later this year. But you just walk through different sections, practicing the triple bottom line over and over and over again until it becomes second nature, that everyone around you in your organization, it's happened at Mid-Hudson, Lori was on our team that made this happen in the first go around, where it wasn't Rebekkah said we had to do this. It was just, this is the way we do things in our organization. And that's the culture shift that's necessary to move forward. Other resources, this just gives you all the categories that you do work in across the program if this is something you're interested in. But I wanted to point out that if you're a member of the New York Library Association, you get free membership in the Sustainable Library Initiative, as well as a discount on the certification program. So in the resources Carolyn put on Southeastern's website, you'll find the link of how to access your free membership. You should all be members of the New York Library Association, by the way. This is my last little talking point, and then I'll take any questions you might have if you don't already are dying for the bathroom. This is one of our member libraries, the Pauling Library, and it's one of my favorite stories. Two of the young women right in the middle of this picture walked into that library one day in Eastern Dutchess County, and they asked if they could reserve the meeting space at the library. And the librarian that was speaking with them knew that the library's policy said you had to be over 18 to use the meeting space, and she knew these two girls were not 18 yet. But instead of just saying no, she said, why? Why do you want to use the meeting space? And they said, we want to make the world suck less. And she said, cool, that's what we do here. Let me go talk to the director. And she went to the director and she said, these two young women would like to use the meeting room, but our policy says you have to be over 18. And he's like, well, why do they want to use the meeting room? And the librarian said, they'd like to make the world suck less. And he said, cool, that's what we do here. And so they gave them the meeting space with adult supervision, and they turned over, when they found out what their idea was to make the world a better place, they turned over the teen programming budget line to the kids and let them decide how to spend that money. They made, you can see here, blankets for the homeless shelter. They used the library's digital media lab to make ads for the pets that needed to be adopted at the shelter. And it was their vision for how to make the world a better place. And that's what I think is so powerful about our organizations, is that we are the partner that helps people bring to life the vision they have for a better tomorrow. So at the end of the day, keep doing what you're doing. See if there's a little more we can go, if not harder, at the idea of sustainability. If you want to talk more about this, I don't know if you can tell, I would love to talk more about this, but we're going to be respectful of the timeline that you have here today. This is my contact info, some of the work we've done over the past, I guess now 15 years on the topic. And I love being connected with people to learn more about what you're doing so I can integrate it into the next iteration of these presentations. So thank you very much for your time. I understand there's a little bit more time for questions if people have anything or any comments people would like to make about what they're doing or thinking about on this topic.
Rebekkah, thank you so much for this presentation. I just feel so energized and so ready to go back. Well, historic Huguenot Street in Southeastern, but I'm in a public library in Albany County.
It might be the high from winning the award, but thank you.
But what I wanted to ask, I've asked a couple of librarians this recently, and I was surprised at how many didn't know about it, was minus AI in a search string. Do people know about that? Yeah, okay, good.
Why
Because
don't you tell everyone what it is?
so minus
Whatever one
AI,
you
so
did.
you don't always need to run an AI search when you do a Google search, right? You know what you're looking for and you know how to build a search because you're librarians. But if you put minus AI at the end of your search string, it does not automatically run an AI search. So it's just, a lot of us can make a big difference by just doing little things like that. So.
Great tip. Thank you. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Rebekkah. I haven't seen you in a while, but I was talking to Ben the other day because, I mean, that idea, that last slide you said, because the sense of community that libraries provide is so important. So there's something that's on Web Junction that I just joined. It's the Bridge Building Resources Hub, which I feel is so connected to this. And it's something I just feel like everybody should look at. It's we're going to be having somebody at Newburgh as a speaker who's on the board of this, Shemichael Holman, and just the idea that the library is a place where everybody can go, and it's a place where everybody's welcome, and this divide needs to stop. It needs to be a place where when people are together, they realize they have more in common with each other, but people are afraid to talk anymore.
That's right.
So, I mean, I do. I feel so passionate about it.
Yeah.
So
You guys do
anyway.
an awesome job in Newburgh. There's also just the announcement yesterday from the Urban Libraries Council. Libraries across the country can now sign up to be in the loop on that project. So I encourage folks to check that out. Nice job, Patty.
So I was going to do a quick comment. So, beyond being the IT guy, I'm also a first responder. So I'm in emergency services. So don't be afraid to talk to your fire departments beyond your fire alarms or anything like that. Wildfires, the flooding, especially on the flooding piece, contact your fire department before the flood. Find out what they can provide. Like for us, we'll go in and help a person if we're trying to protect a furnace or an electrical box. But sometimes we go in and there's nothing we could do. Like there was one house, it was a moat. There was nothing we could do for that person. But you go ahead, talk to your departments, find out where your weaknesses are in your flooding and what pumping capabilities would that look like. And there's another thing, most of us are in volunteer districts. So that means the officers they have day jobs. The fire department is not the day job. So you might be looking at weekends or evenings to meet with these people. And it's just, in some of the organization things, there's usually in a department like that, there's two entities. There's the fire district and there's the fire department. So the district is where the tax dollars go, and that controls the trucks. The department is the people. So just be mindful of that. It's kind of just those two organizations working together, but it does make a difference. So for me, I'm president, so I work on recruitment, but the fire chief works on the actual call type stuff. So you might not need the fire chief. Maybe if you want to bring someone in for an event, talk to the president of the fire department, and you'll get someone like a presentation or a table on a weekend. And if you're really scared, I've done how to talk to the IT guy. I could tell you how to talk to the firefighter. So
I think it's a great tip, Zach, and it helps people think about it's a risk management activity, right? So your local fire department, your insurance agent will come in and assess and give you some tips for what to do. We raised all of our mechanicals off the floor in the area that was most likely to be flooded in my home. So everything's like, all my boilers up on cinder blocks now, the water heater's up on cinder blocks because I don't have a drain in the basement. Like little things like that can save you so much headache if there is an event, a flooding event in your area. So that's great tips, Zachary. Thank you.
Just curious, as an archivist and local history librarian, aside from showing some historic photos of, flooding or climatic events, is there a way to integrate our collections in with current climate recording? For example, like a Farmer's Almanac written by somebody in the local area from 1890, kind of listing the weather and temperature and kind of trying to, put that together as a resource for people to kind of understand this is how climate has changed over the course of 200 years or so.
I love that idea.
Are there examples of that out there? Or?
I think you just made a new slide for me. I think that idea of showing it's happened before here and it can happen again. And how do you integrate that with information? As we think, we're all educators in this room, right? We know many people learn in different ways. Some people need the visual, some people need the statistics, some people need the experience. And I think your collections bring the visual to life that will draw them in to actually maybe read something or learn a little more about what we could do in the future if we learned from the past that we've so carefully preserved for them in our collections. So I don't have any new thoughts. I think you just shared a really great thought though. We have a program at Mid-Hudson this year called the Tempestry Project. We have 130 knitters or fiber artists across the Hudson Valley. Each one is knitting a singular wall hanging that is the climate data for the year they chose between 1895 and 2025. And in this very room in October, there'll be a display of 130 wall hangings. And we had just two of them in the Mid-Hudson Auditorium. We had 1921 and 2021. The summer in 1921 was like this, and in 2021 was like this. And the visual, I'd been talking incessantly about this for 9 months. Nothing made it click for our staff, our board, our member libraries than seeing that wall hanging and what we meant by the data visualization. So I think the integration of visuals to the work is something lacking in a lot of the scientific things that we try to make people read or get interested in. And that's a great way to get that engagement going with the idea. Nice.
Thank you.
We should have co-presenters up here today. I don't see any other hands up and I don't want to make it more awkward than it needs to be. So I just want to thank you again for your attention and patience. It's so nice to see everyone here today. And thank you again to Southeastern for the invitation.
Just before we close the meeting, I'm Kirsten Carter and I'm archivist and deputy here at the FDR Library. And I wanted to remind everyone that the museum is open to you all afternoon next door. Just make sure you have your little blue tags that were available at the check-in desk. But also our staff who are sitting in the back over there have set up a really nice document show in the research room. And that's, you're invited to come and see that too throughout the afternoon. And that's, like Bill mentioned, sort of a preview and a director's cut of the exhibit that's going to open at the end of this month. So you'll get to see a handwritten poem in German that Albert Einstein wrote for FDR and left in the White House for him. And that's, I wanted to mention because we also have the photo op in the lobby over here with the good professor. So you can have those connected. Also Amelia Earhart's letter to FDR that where she suggested going on an around the world flight. Of course, the infamous flight. So go see that letter too. So upstairs in the research room next door. So all afternoon, drop in and yep, we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. And thank you so much, Rebekkah, for that amazing talk. Before we end the membership meeting, I'd like to invite you in joining me in thanking Tessa and the incredible people who make up Southeastern. Their commitment to the libraries and library patrons in this region is unparalleled. Thank you for your amazing work. This concludes officially the membership meeting of Southeastern. Thank you for joining us. And as always, thank you for participating in this and other Southeastern programs. And we hope to see you next year.